So we've been getting a lot of previews of the 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000, and I think it's going to be awesome. And part of the reason I think this is because they're taking a lot of my favorite parts of Kill Team and applying them to 40k. So in this video, I want to quickly go over which parts from Kill Team I think they're taking and applying to 40k in 10th edition.
We've tried to focus back on the datasheets themselves, make that the one-stop shop for most of the rules for your models.
So making all your rules mostly datasheet focused is something we have in the 2021 Kill Team, and I think it really streamlines the process while you're playing. Obviously there's going to be stuff like army-wide abilities, and you have stuff like stratagems or in Kill Team ploys that you're going to have to reference. But having as much as possible on your datasheet means that you don't have to constantly be referencing a book to find information. This is actually really good for your opponents too, just because they don't have to memorize your entire codex. They can just ask to look at your little card, see what abilities that unit has that they want to charge or shoot at, and know what they're up against. I think it's going to lead to a lot less gotcha moments in 40k, which is one of my biggest complaints about the game. So I've talked about this before on the channel, but for Kill Team, I use a website called datacard.app. And it lets you just print off these little tiny cards, and you can use a similar size card and put all your ploys on there. That means when I want to go play with a specific team, I have everything I need. I don't even need to bring a book with me. Which I know part of that is Kill Team is smaller scale, and if you're playing something like Talons of the Emperor and you only have a couple models on the board, you don't need to memorize that much. But it is nice that you can have everything in just a couple documents. A good example of how they're doing this is with the Psychers.
All the psychic powers are literally on the librarian's cards. There's no trying to find that section later in the book.
Yeah, and that leads into another change that we've made. So we've simplified the turn structure. There is no psychic phase anymore. And what we've done is really kind of put those rules again on the datasheet. So every psyker has his particular abilities that he can do. Sometimes that might be a psychic weapon.
They've completely removed the psychic phase from the game, so that's one less thing you have to learn in kind of the core rules. Instead, Psychers will just have an ability on their card that says what they can do. So you don't have to be constantly flipping back and forth between whatever page you want to have open and the actual psychic part of the codex, where half of it's not even relevant. So another way that 10th edition is going to become more like Kill Team is a lot of the stratagems will be reaction based. In Kill Team we call this tactical ploys, which most of them are phrased, when blank happens, do this. And a lot of them can happen in your opponent's turn. So the reason I think this is so good is it's kind of based on game design theory. A game is not a passive thing, it's where you're supposed to actively be doing something. And if you have choices to make during your opponent's turn, that means you're going to be much more actively paying attention to what they're doing. Because right now in 9th edition, there are times where besides rolling armor saves, you feel like you could almost just walk away from the table, come back and see what's left of your army. Now, you're going to have more choices to make as your opponent's playing, so there's going to be more back and forth. They have to think about what you're doing, you're trying to outplay them, so it should be a much more active experience. Whenever you're designing a game, the less time you have of one player just waiting around, the better. So one of my biggest praises of Kill Team is most teams are 1 or 2 sets. You buy 1 or 2 things and that's it, you're ready to play. Like just go buy a Veteran Guardsman set and you can play Kill Team as soon as you build it. But in 9th edition Warhammer, it would cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and you had to go buy an HQ, you had to go buy all your infantry, then you had your vehicles and the stuff you probably actually wanted to play, but you had to have the other things just because of the force organization charts. I mean, I know there's ways around that, but you get punished with CP cost, so really they wanted you to go buy all these individual things. But the way they're changing that to make it where it really can be one set and you're ready to play, is they're giving a lot more attention to combat patrol.
You can buy any of the combat patrols. They're all written to be balanced against each other. So you just pick one that you think looks cool, and you're good to go. So yeah, great, really accessible size game for newer players. But also, if you just want to get a game done in an hour, like Combat Patrol is an amazing opportunity to do that.
Between this and the simplified list building, it should make getting into Warhammer 40,000 way less overwhelming. Because that's normally one reason I recommend Kill Team, besides just loving the actual game mechanics. It's a way easier way to get into the wargaming ecosystem. So just buy one thing and you're ready to play. I'm so glad 40k and Kill Team have that in common now. While I love having a really customized army with all the stuff I personally picked, that's not an awesome starting off point, and it can really be confusing for a new player. So a nice side effect with Combat Patrol being a legitimate game mode and having list building be more simplified is a 1 hour match is a legitimate thing now. So if you have 1 hour, you can play 40k or Kill Team. They're both on the table. So if you want to play a more tactical, stealthy game, you can play Kill Team. If you want some vehicles just start blasting each other, you can actually play 40k within that hour. It used to be the smaller scale 40k games just didn't feel right, so I'm really hoping they fix that here. So I know we already talked about how a lot of the more complicated abilities are going on the data cards, so you don't have to reference them, but it's not just the more complicated abilities that are being changed. Weapon skills, ballistic skills, and number of attacks are all going to be weapon specific, just like how you see it in Kill Team. If you have something like, let's say, an Orc Power Claw, where it's supposed to have less attacks, the way it is now in 9th edition, it says that off to the side, and if you don't glance over and see that, it can be really easy to mess that up. So now you don't even have to reference that, you just look at your weapon, and you know exactly what it does. So the other positive thing is it gives the game designer a little more nuance in their weapon design. Now you can have one weapon that's really inaccurate but hits really hard, or you can have a choice of a weapon that's really accurate, you get lots of shots, but it doesn't hit very hard. You could do that before, but it gets a little complicated when you're adjusting something like ballistic skills. Like I said, it can be done, but it's another thing you have to reference. So now you can have a variety of weapons, and they can all be internally balanced. So another major difference on the actual data cards is we now have a stat called OC, or Objective Control. What this number does is if there's multiple units all contesting an objective, it tells you who wins that objective. I don't know exactly what the math will be like for this, but I'm guessing it will work like Kill Team's APL system. So in Kill Team, you have APL, which is Action Point Limit, and it's how many actions that individual model can do in a turn. Well, I don't think OC will have anything to do with how many actions a unit actually gets. I think it will work the same, where you take that number, add them together, and whoever has the most OC or APL on an objective wins. So this would take place as something like Objective Secured. While on the surface, Objective Secure wasn't that complicated, it's just if a model has it, you win that point. There were some complexities with it I kind of didn't like. One is you just had to keep track of it, and if you don't know your opponent's army that well, it's hard to know what does and doesn't have it without asking them constantly. If you really, really know 40k rules, that's not a problem, but I'm fairly new to it, so a lot of times I'll be playing an army for the first time, and it's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff. But now, if your opponent's playing with the little cards, it will have the OC number on all of them. You can just ask to see your opponent's cards that are relevant to that objective marker, and do the quick math in your head and figure it out. Just like APL for Kill Team. And it will keep awkward situations from happening where you have something like Space Marines and they somehow have OPSEC, and then there's a Chaos Knight that doesn't have it, so a couple Marines still away from a Chaos Knight. I don't know if that's actually how that rule will work right now, but I've seen situations similar to that happen. So I think just having the actual numbers will be really nice. So I thought it was really interesting that so many good ideas from Kill Team are being brought over into 10th edition. And most of them seem to be from player feedback, which I think is awesome on GW's part. Obviously, at this point, we don't know how well it will be implemented, but I'm excited to see what they do anyways. Let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.